Kelly Jones, welcome to Songbook.
Thank you.
And it's kind of appropriate in many ways that we're here at the Hay Festival because you were born not far from here.
No, not far, no.
And here we are with you having got under your belt, massive string of hit singles, 7 big albums, 5 #1 records. I'm interested right at the very beginning to talk about the Welsh influence and the Welsh heritage in your music, and growing up in a small Welsh town, and your sort of childhood experience of that.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a singer, so I grew up following him around working men's clubs. He would give me a £5 to carry his speakers, and I mainly went for the Chinese takeaway in my home, to be honest. And, but you know, my old man, he had a small record deal with Polydor when I was a kid, well, before I was born, and he did some shows with Roy Orbison and stuff like that, and his record was on the jukebox in the local pub. So when I grew up, I had 2 older brothers who were 8 or 9 years older than me. They were listening to stuff like Creedence Clearwater Revival and the Eagles, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, all that kind of stuff. My old man was listening to Stevie Wonder and Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin. So I was brought up in quite a musical house.
And building up a record collection.
Yeah.
Well, what was the first single you bought?
My brother gave me Led Zeppelin 2, so that was the first record I inherited. And I remember walking down the street and that fell out of the sleeve and it went down a drain. So I had to dig that one back out. And then I was a massive AC/DC fan as a kid. So the first record I bought was in Woolworths in Aberdeen, which was Flick of the Switch, which was the follow-up to like Flowers Birch Rock and all those big records. So I was a big rock fan, but I always loved a lot of the country music, you know, the Eagles and stuff like that, because that's what my brothers were playing in the bedroom.
At what point did you then sort of pick up a guitar and start? How did you do that? Did you start sort of playing along to the records you were hearing? Were you beginning to experiment with songwriting at that moment? Yeah.
My old man bought me my first guitar. He didn't ever push it on me. I don't think he wanted to force it on his kids to be necessarily into music. I think what happened was one Christmas there was a £10 nylon string acoustic guitar under the settee for Christmas, and if I want to, and have it. If you don't, then don't worry about it. So after about a year of not wanting it, I asked him could I have some lessons off his guitar player. So I started having lessons with him when I was about 10 or 11, and learning stuff like Pretty Woman, Roy Orbison and stuff like that. And then I ended up, Stuart, the drummer, was 7 doors up the road from me. He had a drum kit. And he was about 4 years older than me, so he was practicing Highway to Hell by AC/DC in his bedroom, and I was practicing in my bedroom, so we could hear each other through 7 doors. So we decided this is a bit ridiculous, may as well go up the garage and play it together. So I did my first gig at 12, and Stuart was 15, and then we actually opened up with Bad Moon Rising, and then we went into Jump by Van Halen, then Hotel California, then we did 2 of our own songs and finished with Wipeout and All Right Now by Free, and then we were asked to leave because we were too young to drink.
Yeah. was this the Working Men's Club?
Yeah, we rehearsed in a little kind of youth club at the end of that road every Thursday and Sunday for 10 years. And I don't know what kept us going there, but we sent 12 tapes away to record companies every Thursday, and in pairs of shoes, trainers, Chinese cartons, cake boxes, anything to get them to open them. And they never opened them. And, we had many rejection letters, and I've kept them all and sent them all back. It's been great. But I don't know, there's something that kind of... I was never really a great bedroom guitar player. I wasn't one to be in my room wanting to learn, you know, Jimi Hendrix riffs, or... we did lots of covers, and I learned them the day I was having to do them in the rehearsal room for the gig and stuff. But if I didn't write something within 10 minutes of picking up a guitar, then I used to put the guitar down. And I'm still like that, really. I mean, I'm quite disciplined in picking the guitar up, but I'm quite quick in putting it down if nothing happens pretty soon. And I just remember making up songs in the bath when I was a kid, you know, playing with your Action Man or whatever, but I just always remember just making up melodies in my head, and I think that's way before I had any interest in learning an instrument or anything like that.
So easing your own songs then gradually into the band set. Well, describe the way that the band began to build then.
Well, when we first started, I wasn't really the songwriter in the band. There was another guy called Nicky Geek, and he was writing all the songs. And I was a kid, you know. I was 12, and they were all 16, 17. So I mean, I had nothing to say about anything. I mean, I barely had hair downstairs. You know what I mean? So I had nothing to say. What I did, it was a great day, but. So I was just in and out with all these different bands, loads of bad haircuts, loads of bad names, nothing really changed much. And then we just kind of went in and out of all these different phases. You know, one week you'd be sounding like the Lemonheads, the next week you'd be like the Black Crowes, the next week you'd be like Pearl Jam or Jimi Hendrix, and just weaving through all these cover versions, Beatles covers, and you know, Green Day or Nirvana, Bob Dylan, Neil Young. And I think by doing that for 9, 10 years, by the time you start seriously writing your songs, I think you've learned so many chord progressions and changes and ways of playing songs. I think that comes through in your own way, but it comes through in your own way as yours, you know. Yeah. As opposed to, if we'd been signed 4 years previous to when we did, we probably would have sounded like somebody else and dropped 3 years later. But yes. I think once you find your own track, and you're kind of in, you know. Because
there's one influence on you at that time that I just want to pick out one name, and that's the tragically hip.
Yeah. Well,
interesting, edgy music.
Well, I was working in a market selling fruit and veg for 6 years, from 16 to the day I signed off. I shouldn't have been signing on, but I was signing on. And I was in art college. I went to college at 16 to do graphic design because I didn't want to get a job, because I thought if I get into a job, then nothing I want to do is ever going to come to anywhere really. Because my brothers all worked in factories or they went in the army and stuff like that. I just knew how quick it could be to be kind of stuck in a rut really. And so doing that, going to art college, it was an opportunity for me to kind of just take my time a bit and listen to music and work out what I wanted to do with the band. And bands like the Tragically Hip were writing very narrative songs. Very, you know, they came from a small town in Canada, and they were writing very storytelling, descriptive, character-based songs, as was Neil Young and Dylan, and but also people like Elvis Costello. I love people like Tom Waits, you know, all that kind of Nick Cave. Anything that kind of told a story, really. Because when I first started, I think I ended up doing like a HND in animation of filmmaking, and the animation thing drove me crazy because it's like 25 drawings a second, but the actual doing the idea of the story was intriguing. So I started writing lots of dialogue, and this was around the time Pulp Fiction, lots of Jimmy McGovern stuff on the TV, Our Friends in the North, you know, Chris Eccleston, Ian McEwan kind of stuff. And I think by me writing dialogue, that was when my lyric writing changed, because, you know, Billy Davies' daughter, a local boy in a photograph, she takes her clothes off. All those started off as scripts. Yeah. And ironically, just before I got a record deal, BBC offered me a job to write scripts, and Richard Branson offered me a record deal the same month. So I picked the rock and roll first, and then go back to it. But I think it all started from an interest in drama and those bands, but also in dialogue and listening to people talking and stuff. Yeah.
You mentioned Local Boy in the Photograph, which was your first hit single. Tell us about the inspiration behind the song, Kelly.
I used to play kind of county football with Miguel Morgan and Canna Valley, and there was a kid who used to play right back, and I got to know him really well. He was a really cool kid, and he was a good-looking kid, and he was kind of one of those ones you looked at and thought, you know, he's got it all kind of thing. And then a few years later, we found out he jumped in front of a train, and we were all a bit shocked by it. And then we read about it in the local paper, and there's a picture of him smoking which I think was a joint actually, and that's the picture they used, and he was a local boy in the photograph. And it was just, I'd never really known anybody our age to do that, to kind of end their life, and nobody really knew why he ended his life. And when you're 18 or 19, you're quite naive and you just write everything down. And it was just more about a celebration of his life than it was about his death, really, about the kids sitting on the bank drinking, and lots of imagery about the seasons and the clocks going back. And I think that's where I found that descriptive writing became what people would stop and listen to, really.
We should hear it.
Okay.